Here's a copy of the letter that Frank Calabrese Jr. Wrote to the FBI from while he was locked up with his father in Milan, Michigan. This is a key piece of evidence at the family secrets trial. As we all know, Frank decided to cooperate against his father, and this letter is actually what started the family secrets indictment. Now, the prosecution showed the some of the videotapes when Junior was out of jail and visiting his father, Frank Sr., who was locked up in Milan. And he went on to say that his father came up with a unique code. They would talk in opposite genders. And in this particular video, Senior was asking Junior, "How's the curly guy?" And he was referring to Frank Toots Caruso on the outside. Now, this was a very long, in-depth investigation by the FBI. You know, they were looking into 18 unsolved murders dating back to the 1970s. And when they first received the letter from Frank Jr., at first they really wasn't sure if he was serious or what his motives were. But that's basically what started the indictment into the family secrets trial. And they built a really strong case against all the defendants. Now, one of the star witnesses at the family secrets trial and one of the first witnesses called was Frank Calabrese Jr. I'll never forget seeing him on the stand. This guy was so nervous the first 2 days testifying against his father. He never once looked in Frank Calabrese Sr.'s direction. I'm not sure how he did it. I can just imagine how he felt testifying against his very own dad. Junior agreed to wear a wire against his father in the Milan prison courtyard, and he was able to con and trick his father into talking about murders and crimes that Frank Sr. Should have known about. But these taped conversations were crucial in prosecuting Frank Calabrese Sr. And at one point, Frank Sr. almost found the wire on his son. Now, Frank Calabrese Jr. testified that one day his father may have suspected of him wearing a wire, and he asked him to take off his shirt if he could see a new tattoo. Frank Jr. came very, very close in his father finding the wire. Frank testified that he was scared that his father would have literally killed him in the yard. Luckily for Junior, his father never did find the wire. Now, Junior got very lucky. It was a very close call where one day Frank Sr., who I think suspected of Junior wearing a wire, asked him if he could see his tattoo. And if he would have found the wire, he probably would have killed him right there in prison, right there outside on the yard. So they switched to plan B, where they ran the wire through these headphones that Junior would wear while he was out in the yard, getting his father to talk on tape. Now, the star witness at the family secrets trial was Nick Calabrese. Not only did Junior testify against his father, but he also testified against his uncle Nick. And he pitted his uncle against his father. And he was able to con his father to get his father to open up and start talking about murders and crimes that the Chinatown crew committed. Now, a lot of the evidence at the family secrets trial and the vast majority of the murders were committed by Frank Calabrese Sr. It was interesting to watch Frank as his son and his brother testified against him. At times, Frank Sr. would be smiling, laughing, making jokes with his lawyer, Joe Lopez, and at other times he would lose his temper, pound his fists on the desk, yelling, swearing, and glaring at his son. Now, here's a great photo of Angelo LaPetria, the Hook, the Bull, as they call them, boss of the Chinatown crew. There's a lot of evidence and talk about him during the family secrets trial. There in the middle is Frank Calabrese Sr., and on the right, his brother Nick Calabrese. Nick testified that the Hook told his brother Jimmy that something should have been done about the Calabrese brothers years ago, meaning Frank and Nick possibly could have gotten killed. Now, shortly after the family secrets trial, Junior decided to write a book about the trial and his life with his father and his brother. I read the book. It was pretty good. I'd give it maybe a 6 or a 7 out of a 10. But the best book on the family secrets trial was written by Jeff Cohen, a very well known Chicago reporter. He was in court every single day, and I highly recommend it. Aside from all the interviews, talk shows, podcasts, book deals, and even an upcoming movie deal, Frank Calabrese Jr. even had the audacity to start doing mob tours in Chicago. And my friend and I used to joke around that if we ever see this mob tour bus in the Grand Avenue neighborhood, that we were going to throw a brick through the window. I think he's still doing tours today, and I just can't believe that he has the audacity. Frank Jr. and Nick Calabrese both testified that after Nick shot his best friend John Fecarata, that he dumped the murder weapon into a sewer right there near Belmont. And Frank Jr. testified that I think it was a day later he was summoned to go retrieve the gun, so they couldn't tie it to his uncle Nick, which he did. So he was actually part of that murder, if you think about it. Now, another lie that Junior told on the stand, I felt he misled the FBI a bit, is he said that his only intention was to lock up his father for life, uh, and that he had no intention of bringing down the Chicago outfit. However, I'm sure he briefed the FBI and his 302s on a who's who of the outfit and what he knows about past and current crimes. Now, some of the guys in the Grand Avenue neighborhood, especially the owner of La Luce, would refer to the Calabrese brothers, meaning Junior and Kurt, as the Melendez brothers, which I thought was kind of funny. Mike, the owner of La Luce, went on to say that when Junior stole all that money from Frank and was going on a cocaine binge, that Senior went into this restaurant, grabbed him by the throat, and demanded to know where his son was. There's top defensive attorney in Chicago, my favorite, Joe the Shark Lopez. I could not wait for him to get up there and cross examine Junior on the stand. He was trying to get Junior to admit that his real intention were all self motivated, that he was definitely a cokehead, a coke dealer, and admitted stealing over $700,000 from Frank. On the stand, Junior nervously admitted to stealing over $750,000 from his father from a couple of his stash places. He said that he spent half of it partying downtown on Rush Street, and the other he invested in restaurants, cafes, etc. When his father found out, he lured him to a place, put a gun to his head, and he thought he was going to kill him. This was one of the restaurants that Junior ran and operated. He opened up this with some of the money that he stole from his father, Frank Sr. After Sr. found out, he had his younger son, Kurt, start running this restaurant. Junior was not allowed in the restaurant anymore, and Frank Sr. took over Bella Nuda. But this was a pretty happening spot back in the day. Frank Jr. admitted on the stand that he had a serious cocaine problem back then. He also sold drugs as one of his hustles. Um, he had to go to rehab for this. He admitted on spending hundreds of thousands of dollars going on vacation, doing blow, drinking, etc., partying. And when Frank Sr. Was listening to his son testify against him, I remember Frank just smiling, shaking his head back and forth. Now, a lot of organized crime members, especially Chicago outfit guys, end up in Milan, Michigan. Guys like Little Jimmy Marcello, he was locked up with Nick Calabrese. I think they even shared a cell together. And Frank Calabrese was here, and this is where his son wore a wire against him. But there's a federal prison in Milan, Michigan. Here's a photo of father and son locked up together when they were basically trying to rebuild their relationship. And Junior was able to get Frank to talk about several murders. One of them was the Ortiz Polish guy hit where they shotgun blasted him to death. Frank was talking about the caliber round that they used. And Junior also said that they wanted him to go out and kill Fecarata, and I think that's total bullshit. If you wonder where the family secrets nickname came from, it's because Frank Jr. cooperated, wore a wire, and testified against his own father. Imagine that. Testifying against your own dad, knowing that your testimony is going to lock him up for life, as well as his Uncle Nick, who he claims that he loves so much. I don't know about you guys, but I could never testify against my father, but that's what Junior did. Now, luckily for the younger Calabrese, Kurt, he wasn't part of the family secrets trial, but I remember seeing him in court every single day. I never really got the chance to speak to him, and I wasn't sure if he was on his brother's side or if he was more on his father's side. I remember one time Frank Calabrese Sr. started yelling. He embarrassed Kurt. Kurt stormed out of the courtroom, but I found out later on that Kurt is definitely on his father's side against his brother. Now, several months after the family secrets trial, when Frank Calabrese was locked up for life, the FBI raided one of Frank Calabrese's homes, and they found hundreds of thousands of dollars, most of it old money, like this photo you see right here, and also several valuable jewelry. And I'm pretty sure that the FBI got the tip from Frank Calabrese Jr. Also, when they raided Frank Calabrese's house, aside from finding close to $1 million in cash, they also found hidden valuable jewelry, gold chains, watches, diamonds, rings, and other precious stones. This was part of Frank Calabrese's stash, and we all know who tipped off the FBI to find this stuff. Junior also testified that he was shocked when he found out that Nicky was running his father's book on the outside, which was worth, I forget, but hundreds of thousands of dollars. And Frank Calabrese claimed that Nicky Ferriola is his godson, which Junior said is bullshit. They just use that so Nicky can visit him in prison as his godson. Now we'll end on a funny note. After the family secrets trial, all the defendants were found guilty. Most of them were pretty much locked up for life. But Frank Calabrese, he wasn't done. He actually had a priest who was one of his only visitors, the only guy allowed to visit him. He talked him in code and convinced him to go up to his house in Lake Geneva and retrieve one of Liberace's violins that was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the priest got caught.